Ours is the sector connecting people and businesses to the world. And while life has changed in 2020, travel remains an essential part of life. And not just for the traveller, but for every business, every community, and every ecosystem, in every destination they visit. For nearly a decade, we have consistently outpaced the global economy, and across the world, governments are recognizing and realizing the importance of investment in their sector. But beyond the data, there is an often unrealized yet equally important chapter to this remarkable story. Because our sector wields the incredible power of positive change. Together in travel and tourism, we not only support and improve the lives of people from across the globe, but sustain and care for the fabric and infrastructure of the world we live in. For every hotel stay, the power of travel and tourism is often overlooked. Ours is the sector connecting people and businesses to the world. And while life has changed in 2020, travel remains an essential part of life. And not just for the traveller, but for every business, every community, and every ecosystem, in every destination they visit. For nearly a decade, we have consistently outpaced the global economy, and across the world, governments are recognizing and realizing the importance of investment in their sector. But beyond the data, there is an often unrealized yet equally important chapter to this remarkable story. Because our sector wields the incredible power of positive change. Together in travel and tourism, we not only support and improve the lives of people from across the globe, but sustain and care for the fabric and infrastructure of the world we live in. For every hotel stay, for every flight taken, for every destination visited, we create jobs which provide people the opportunity to shape their own future, to feed their families, preserve their cultures and traditions, and improve the quality of the lives they lead. In the last 5 years, 1 in 4 of all new jobs were created by our incredible sector, which accounts for 330 million jobs around the world. We play an important role in empowering women and young people too. Research shows that within travel and tourism, women make up 54% of the workforce. It also employs a higher share of youth workers than other industries, who account for 30% of the sector's employment, embracing a diverse, inclusive, and multicultural workforce. The revenue we generate also supports the cost of infrastructure projects to improve education, to build housing and provide health services, increasing the overall well-being of life in local communities, whilst redistributing socio-economic power, helping developing nations prosper. And it's not just the human world that feels the positive effects of travel. It also improves the natural world too. Conservation and anti-poaching efforts around the world rely on the income from tourism to defend the natural wonder of our planet and provide us with the means to travel and experience the world in a sustainable, positive way. We at the World Travel and Tourism Council are realizing a new future. For the last 30 years, we have been the voice of the global private sector. By uniting government and industry leaders and engaging with communities, we will lead the economic recovery of our sector to a safe and sustainable future. A future where we will continue to create jobs, empower and protect the people, communities and natural wonders that make travel and tourism so special. Because this is the power to create a better world. The power of travel and tourism.
Distinguished guests, Would you please welcome to the stage President and CEO of Hilton and the Chair of the World Travel and Tourism Council, Chris Nassetta.
Well, good morning, everyone. I am thrilled to be able to welcome you to our 2021 Global Summit for the World Travel and Tourism Council. We have been a long time in the making to bring this event together. Last we were together was in Seville, Spain 2 years ago. I think we all know last year we're not able to gather. And I have to say, as many stages as I have had the privilege of being on over many years, I've never felt more privileged than I do today to be on this stage, because this is the first event that I've been able to be on a stage with live participants that are numbering, I think at this point, Gloria, 600. So it's amazing to see everybody out here. For those of you that are here, thank you for coming and joining us in beautiful Cancun and from around the world. We're hosting our first hybrid event, and I think we have thousands of people that are joining us from around the world. So important today that we rally together as we get through, hopefully in the not too distant future, this global pandemic and get back on our feet as an industry. I wanted to say a very special thank you to all of our distinguished guests, particularly our host who's here with us today, Carlos Joaquin Gonzalez, who is the governor of Quintana Roo. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience in helping us be able to pull this event off in such a beautiful destination. We also have ministers of tourism from Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Spain, Portugal, Greece, and many other dignitaries. To all of you, welcome. Of course, our strategic sponsors, American Express, the Saudi Arabia Ministry of Tourism, Global Rescue, Hilton, and our diamond sponsor and venue host, Palace Resort. Appreciate all that you all have done to bring this to reality, and thank you to the rest of our gold, silver, and bronze sponsors. And last but not least, I would be remiss in not thanking Gloria and the entire WTTC team. The last year, I think for all of us in this industry, frankly, for all of us, around the world, for all of humanity, has been one of the most challenging years, but certainly travel and tourism has been at the epicenter of the issues. And Gloria and the team have kept the spirits high, kept our advocacy going, and made sure that we were front and center as we were both addressing the crisis and thinking about the opportunities ahead. So Gloria, like all of us, doing more with less during the pandemic, you and the team have done a phenomenal job. And in organizing this event, which is an extraordinary effort in a normal year, you can imagine trying to be one of the first big live hybrid events that's been pulled off in the world was quite an undertaking. So Gloria, thank you. You did it. We had lots of conversations. We were worried, but here we are, 600 people in the room, all safe and secure, and thousands more joining in to help us lead this industry to the next era of travel. Before I get started, I want to do something that I know is important to me, and I think important to many in this room, and that's to remember an incredible industry leader and a man that was a dear friend, while a competitor, was one of my very close friends, and that's Arne Sorensen. Arne left, I think we all know, an incredible mark on this amazing industry of ours, and with Marriott Associates all around the world as one of the great leaders in our industry and for that company. His legacy will obviously live on for many years, and I know many of you, like me, are feeling his loss and keeping his family in your thoughts and prayers. So I thought it would be nice to take a moment and honor Arne, have a moment of silence, and for all of those lives as well that were lost in this last year to COVID. the pandemic fully, but we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think it's fair to say 2020 challenged all of us enormously. But we've persevered as an industry in so many inspiring ways. I saw it every single day with my teams that represent us in 120 countries around the world, all of which were dealing with this. And I know every single person in this room can say the same of their own organization. While we're not through it, we are on the brink of recovery, and it is critically important, more than ever in the history of our industry, that we work together to reunite as travel resumes around the world. Because the one thing that we do know is there are tremendous benefits when people broaden their horizons and build understanding across cultures and borders. Fundamentally, while some will say this is stunted travel permanently, I don't think that is the case. People's desire for experiences and connections hasn't changed. In fact, I would argue the pandemic has only heightened those trends, and as certainly we talk to our customers, it supports that. As people are really eager to get out and create those new memories, those special moments, to make those connections, whether that be for leisure, whether that be for business, whether that be at an incredible conference like this, things that just can't be done on a screen. As an industry, I think it's really important, and we'll be talking about this throughout the next couple days, that we seize this moment. In my mind, we have an opportunity, but more importantly, I think everybody in this room and everybody joining us around the world has a responsibility to reconnect the world and build a truly inclusive growth profile in our industry for our children, our grandchildren, and beyond. Over the last year, we have had a really good chance to see what happens when travel and tourism is stalled. The economic and social impacts are enormous. Our industry's contribution to global GDP dropped by an astounding 49% last year, and we lost 62 million jobs in 1 year. This is why, as we focus on the future, we've got to be more focused than ever on creating new opportunities for people to build better lives for themselves and their families, because we know travel and tourism is an engine of opportunity. We have to be focused on protecting the destinations where we live, where we work, where we travel, and we have to be focused on truly driving inclusive growth that prioritizes investing in diverse talent, the people serving our customers every day on the front lines who are going to be the future, the future leaders of our industry. We know creating a safe environment is the key to unlocking travel. For that matter, it always has been. These advancements we've seen in therapeutics and testing and vaccines are very encouraging. In fact, the development of vaccines, I think, is really a modern miracle. And we're seeing huge progress around the world, different speeds, but huge progress around the world in distributing those vaccines. That said, what we know from the past, with other disruptions and crises that we've had, this needs to be a coordinated effort. We know what happens when every country sort of retreats to their own corner and deals with it themselves in their own way, and they don't work together to combat a crisis, in this case, this terrible disease. Our sector needs to lead the way in advocating internationally for the opening of borders and common sense approaches to ensure safety and consistency at every step of the traveler journey as we progress through this recovery. We can do this. We can open borders. We can get people moving. We have 600 of you that moved to Cancun to be here today in a very safe way. We just have to be intelligent and coordinated in how we do it. Measures like seamless, secure, and internationally accepted health credentialing systems and widespread effective testing are certainly going to help reduce the need for quarantining, allowing travelers to move safely and more freely around the world. And it's going to be important that we work together with countries and with the private sector all over the world to bring it to life with existing technologies that we have and new technology solutions where we need them. Together, we have to focus on building partnerships across all sectors and push for the collaboration that we know is essential for our recovery. WTTC's safe travel protocols are an incredible example of how our industry quickly came together to reassure travelers and build confidence in their ability to travel safely while creating experiences that they expect. I thank Gloria and her team. They were all over this very early in advocating and working with many governments around the world on these protocols, and it has made a difference, and it gives us an amazing foundation to build from. As WTTC has done throughout its 30-year history, it will play a central and critical role in uniting our industry, lending their expertise and advocating for what will benefit us all as we work towards a full recovery in travel and tourism. Everyone in this room and everyone logged in virtually around the world is going to be critical in making this a reality. We all have to look past our competitive spirits and seek out opportunities to collaborate and share ideas that will help propel this industry forward from the crisis once and for all. We all know and see that our industry has the ability to transform lives. Not long ago, our industry was in fact the second fastest growing industry of all industries in the world, outpacing broader global economic growth. We absolutely can reclaim that momentum and continue to be a force for good around the world. We cannot back down from this moment. Together, we need to redefine a new age of travel that propels us into the future, powering progress for all of our stakeholders. This is a huge opportunity in front of us. I know a lot of people think travel has been forever impaired. We all in this room know it hasn't. We talked for many years about the golden age of travel that got disrupted by COVID. The reality is the next 2 to 3 years when we get through this pandemic, if we do our jobs, will be better than what we had before, because we know that people want to travel, they want to see the world. We just have to give them the means to do that. We will, we can emerge from this period and build a better world for all of us to travel. We must do it. It's an imperative. It is an awesome responsibility, and I have every confidence with the people in this room and those around the world that as an industry, we've done it before, and we will do it again. Thank you again. It's been wonderful to serve for the last 3 years as your chair, and I will continue to be very actively involved as I'm not going anywhere from an industry point of view. So I've appreciated my three years with you. Now I would like to invite Gloria and Governor Gonzalez, if I could, to join me on the stage. Governor, we just wanted to give a very special thank you to you for your leadership throughout the pandemic and your support of travel and tourism as our industry recovers. On behalf of all of us here at WTTC, we're so appreciative of your partnership and so appreciative that you made the time and effort to be patient with us, to be able to bring this event here and be able to host such a fabulous event, although it took a little longer than any of us had hoped. Your leadership here in this region of the world is, I think, a fabulous example for what others can do around the world. So thank you very much, and we would like to demonstrate how committed we are to Quintana Roo, the Yucatan, Jalisco, and Baja California Sur by presenting you with this award. Gloria?
It's the Global Leaders Award. Congratulations, Governor, and thank you very much for your leadership. You can hold it here because of protocols. I cannot give it to you, just like that.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Governor, it is worth mentioning that members represented in this room and around the world have a plan to invest $2.5 billion in your region in the coming years. We think will create more than 100,000 jobs. So you've done a fabulous job helping get us through this crisis, and our member companies are going to help on the other side of the crisis by investing and creating jobs. So once again, thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Gracias, Gloria. Gracias. Buenos días. Good morning.
Good morning. It is a great pleasure to be here today with all of you. And I thank again WTTC for the initiative of holding the summit, annual summit here in Cancun, Quintana Roo. It is very important for all the destinations in Quintana Roo and in Mexico in general to be able to have this summit meeting here in our state. I also would like to invite you all in order to visit, to get to know our beauties and attractions of sun, beach, jungle, and an ocean that will embrace us with all this wonderful nature. Likewise, I really appreciate the fact that you have awarded me this prize on behalf of the government of Quintana Roo and the entire population of Quintana Roo. I really appreciate this honor, although I do know very well that receiving an award is always something that is engaging us to work even harder and more and closer to our society. Tourism is a very important sector for Quintana Roo. However, we have been facing a very difficult moment since last year, like practically the entire tourism industry has. And this pandemic that struck us on a complex global scenario when it was always necessary to consider new strategies, coordinated answers, and in an urgent manner among all of us, because mostly we needed to take care of the collective interest so we could all overcome the crisis. Suddenly, we found a scenario never seen before, and a population mostly connected to the tourism industry ended up without productive activities and without a wage to bring to for the families. But most important was to preserve the health of everybody. So we had to adopt temporary measures such as staying home, stopping any public actions, massive groupings, reduce commercial or work areas, only essential activities, to apply social distancing, the restriction of city mobilization, the paralyzation of economic activities. These were complicated and harsh measures, with never affecting human rights of the citizenship, which is a basis of democratic societies. The sequelae of pandemic, the high possibilities of infections with human interaction, the risk of death, the application of restrictive measures that I've already mentioned, made great difficulties in all the order we were used to. We had to do something extraordinary in the normal activities because the condition of the operation of economy, of normality, social relations, educations, of our own health are no longer the same, and they have become extraordinary conditions. If we consider the challenges we posed before ourselves in view of this pandemic, the priority was to work paying special attention to human dimension. Our priority was to save lives and avoid infections. We focused on a social dimension that has to do with the most vulnerable sectors, poverty and inequality. This is what we did under the premise that we needed to take care everybody, all the citizens, female and male. Also maintaining the jobs of our productive plant, and we designed a plan, each one from our own position, enterprise, or institution. We had to do what was necessary to take care of himself and reactivate economy and job protections to help the economy of the families. Quintana Roo must continue being one of the states with the highest growth rate in economic activities. Commercial and tourism insertion must be central in the government agenda and of our growth. And we must consolidate it as a permanent policy that will transcend the duration of constitutional mandates. The new regulations are already being implemented in the tourism industry, forcing us to keep on promoting the opening of markets commercially, as well as consolidating it as a great promoter of our economy. And with these, support the trust of the investors and increasing the number of hotel rooms and lodging centers. The strategies implemented to promote development and economic diversification will help us in this post-pandemic era for economic recovery. And we already have better indicators in the number of flights, passengers, ground, air passengers, hotel occupancy, and access to the different parks. Let's understand that today is our moment, and we cannot allow that resignation and fear will gain over hope. There is still a lot to do. We cannot miss the increase of social demands, economic, cultural, and environmental demands, because people expect more and demands more. Everybody wants more opportunities for progressing, and opportunities must reach everybody. And this is a concept.
Members, Excellencies, friends, welcome to our Global Summit. Welcome to the friends that are here today in person and online from all over the world. We have all seen and experienced the effect of the pandemic, but hearing from the social impact from these children reminded us that every decision we make, every recommendation we share has an impact on our present and our future. COVID has devastated our sector and the lives and livelihoods of hundreds of millions of people around the world. People who depend on travel and tourism to survive, to provide to their families, and to put food on their table. This virus has not only changed how we engage with each other, but how we connect. Just look at us today, sitting almost 2 meters of distance apart. First time ever. But it has changed our today and our tomorrow. Our 2021 economic impact research shows that our sector lost almost $4.5 trillion. And as Chris mentioned, 62 million jobs have been destroyed. Travel and tourism GDP contribution fell 4.7 trillion in 2020 from nearly 9.2. That's a decrease massive, 49%. Basically, our contribution to the global economy decreased from 10.4% to 5.5%. Leisure spending decreased 49%, while business 61%. And just to put it in context, the worst crisis that we had before was the financial crisis. Well, the COVID had 18 times the impact of the financial crisis, 18 times. The global community has now been dealing with COVID pandemic for more than a year. And as we look back to when this crisis started, we can truly see the impact. On a global scale, we have lost lives and livelihoods. On a personal level, many of us have lost friends and loved ones. But while 2020 was not the year we expected, this was a year when people really came together. We saw our sector joining forces to support our workforce and our local communities, from using our facilities as emergency hospitals, offering hotel rooms to doctors and nurses, for instance, to providing meals to millions of people, and transforming convention centers or cruises and medical facilities. We have seen an amazing response. But one thing has been clear. Our members, the leaders and captains of our sector, have truly stepped up. I'm very proud. I have learned through their example that leadership matters, especially during difficult times. Chris, our chair, and our board, and all the members have not only provided guidance, but valuable insight. They have been our North Star. And at WTTC, we have worked tirelessly to support not only the members, but the entire travel and tourism ecosystem. I want to take this opportunity to thank you all, and to also acknowledge and thank the amazing WTTC team for their hard work and dedication in these very challenging times. Big applause for everyone. With the knowledge of our members and public health experts, we created the Safe Travel Global Protocols, as Chris mentioned, and the staff, to ensure that we don't repeat the same mistakes of the past, and we create consistency for the sector and reassurance for the traveler. The response has been impressive. Over 260 destinations they have received this recognition today. And by the way, Cancun was the first one, or one of the first ones. Congratulations there, Governor, as well. Great example. We engage with more than 150 governments to advocate for policies and measures needed for the survival of our sector and our workforce. We receive great support in countries small and large, and I would like to thank the government leaders here today, because your partnership has been amazing and your support very valuable. Thank you very much to all the government leaders that are joining us here today. And as one of the major challenges in the pandemic was probably the international coordination in 2020, we worked very closely with governments and the G20 community. And I would especially want to thank and acknowledge the leadership of Saudi Arabia, the 2020 chair of the G20. His Excellency Ahmed Al-Khatib, Minister of Tourism, supported the private sector and made history by inviting us to take part of the G20 tourism meeting for the first time ever, where we presented a plan to recover 100 million jobs. But the most important, for the first time ever, the importance of the private sector in travel and tourism was included in the Leaders' Declaration. Thank you very much for your leadership as well. Thank you. What a year we had. What is clear to me is that we're not going back to 2019. We're moving forward.
Matthew, why don't we just start with you and go right across the panel. What are the barriers that you see right now still, either on an international, national, or regional basis, that are an impediment to recovery? Things that you would like to see change, lifted, adapted?
Well, you're going to like me as a moderator because I thought about it this morning. Just read the page and a half that WTTC put out. Risk assessment, right? The protocols, the safety, I mean, it's right there. I mean, it's very well done. If you haven't read it, read it. And I do think that as governments and places are figuring out, you know, the ability to act on those things, and I do think that some of those policies, not having the idea of focusing on the risk of the individual traveler, you know, huge news yesterday with the EU. I mean, that was a big move forward. So I think the risk assessment piece, the testing, the protocols of safety, it's right there. So read that document.
Jose, some of the barriers that you see on a regional or even international level that you think are still impediments to the recovery?
Yeah, definitely we look obviously at large destinations like Cancun or Los Cabos, but we also need and address the need of having local circuits of tourism around communities. And we need also to increase the capacity of them in terms of adopting technology and adopting these safety protocols that these small communities, these towns that we obviously would like to visit, would like to encourage their growth, need to be strengthened with. So there's a lot of work to be done in these small communities too.
And if we're going to let people travel if they have vaccinations, we have to figure out what is that technology that allows them to safely upload it, actually get it, you know, communicate it to the proper authorities to be able to start this trip and this process. How about you? You know, what impediments do you see? You must have applauded the EU decision that is now going to allow vaccinated, you know, people to travel.
Yes, we did. There is a very high barrier at this moment, and it's pretty much the following. World Health Organization identifies a set of activities of high risk, and one of them is still traveling. So all of us, you know, are saying that we have to articulate ourselves. Yes, we do. Governments have to articulate ourselves. But among us, we still have a huge barrier to overcome. And basically, it deals with the risk, the perception of the risk. And now, as you can imagine, in the pilot seat is the health authorities are in the pilot seat. And we have to have a clear message from the World Health Organization saying, okay, traveling does not bring any extra risk as long as you comply with the rules. And that's it. And we didn't get that message yet. So that's something, when the day comes, I guess that the barrier will be removed for sure.
Arnold, impediments to travel that you would love to see adapted, lifted?
Yeah, building on what she said, it's just uniformity or consistency around the world. You have today governments with health ministries, transportation departments, tourism sectors, and they're not all on the same page. And then across the countries, people aren't all on the same page, and that's what WTTC is trying to encourage, and that's, you know, the critical aspect of our private-public partnership. And that's what we need, science-based, uniform approach so people can travel safely in a frictionless way.
Great. And Greg?
I don't have much to add other than consistency is a good point. If governments who have constantly changed their policies have inhibited demand and intent from people who want to travel, I think what we're looking for through the summer, through the back of the year, is certainty. Whatever the friction cost is of traveling, understand what that is, and then be able to either pay or not pay those friction costs, but allow certainty so the traveler can book, the traveler can plan, the companies can correspond with whatever demand they need to service that planning and that travel.
All of the surveys show that people want to start traveling again. They are so eager, they're chomping at the bit. But as you mentioned, it's feast or famine. If a resort or area is open, then they cannot keep up with the capacity. And I think a lot of people are concerned about returning to over-tourism. And we have a really good question because that's been a conversation point here at the conference. 2019 was the last year of what people described as over-tourism, too much pressure on certain areas. So how do we avoid doing that as we come out of this crisis?
This is one of my favorite topics. First of all, I think it starts when we were in Buenos Aires. I was on a panel on this. It's a very difficult subject in the first place, but I think it starts with self-determination. And I think one of the things that we've forgotten is when we talk about sustainability, we don't just talk about the environment. We talk about the preservation of natural cultural heritage and benefiting the local economies. So I think what you're going to see here is a lot of people, certainly at the affluent and experiential traveler, we have lots of data that this pandemic has made people rethink how they're going to travel. And I do think that weaving those stories into it, and one of the things that we did in talking about sustainability, we doubled down on all of our efforts, storytelling, data, et cetera. But one of the most important pieces is connecting sustainability to what was in that video. And Gloria, the videos you had today were some of the best I've ever seen WTTC do. And I think what it gets to is reminding people that we actually, in Florianopolis a long time ago at WTTC, somebody talked about what would happen if you had an imaginary switch to all the environmentalists that if you clicked it, everything would stop. Well, here we are.
Yeah.
And it was proposed that it could actually be one of the greatest disasters in the history of the planet, ecologically and culturally and economically. So I think that coming back, focusing on the impact of travelers in the local economy, the preservation and things, those stories need to be told better. And I think that our sustainability stories need to be woven into the fabric of everything we say and everything we do, not as an appendix. It needs to be woven into the core of who we are and what we say. And we just have to become better storytellers.
And we're going to really get deep into that conversation tomorrow because it really is about how we recover. Jose, we had another question that came in on the app about how do we improve technology to be able to accelerate the recovery here in Mexico?
I think that I would like, it's not only in Mexico, it's everywhere. First, connectivity is something that needs to be addressed very fast. And basically, we are seeing a transition between all this connectivity that we have, the 5G networks getting into connection with Wi-Fi 6, the capacity that we have to take all this data and produce more intelligent offering, a more savvy guest is coming also, and we need to anticipate a little bit what is happening to them. And also thinking that when we go online, someone puts us a cookie and follow us everywhere. So why are not taking this advantage when we get into Cancun and we follow all the traces and we find at what time we would like to wake up, which kind of breakfast I'd like to have, which kind of sport I'm willing more have to experience in my time during the visit in the city. So there's a lot of things that needs to be addressed within the industry and trying to have a more connected experience with a more savvy guest that is coming everywhere.
Arnold, we have another question here. How difficult is this rehiring process going to be? Because people who are in marketing, people who are in technology, they have the capability of leaving travel and tourism and getting very good jobs in other sectors that are recovering faster. In the service industry, people may be looking for what are those openings that maybe are not where they'd been employed for the last decade. How hard is the rehiring process going to be in your business, but also more broadly?
Yeah, more broadly. I think, look, travel and tourism is still an exciting sector. And as we point out, the things that are open today, you can't service the demand. And so it has a tremendously bright future. We will learn to live with COVID-19. We'll learn how to manage it and live with it. And the future of travel and tourism is extremely bright. So I don't think it's going to be exceedingly difficult. There may be a period of time. You know, we've lost some good people who said, well, I don't know, we're going to start again. And so I've got to have this opportunity in another sector. But when we're rolling again, we'll be able to attract the people that we need, as I feel.
Greg, I just kind of want to wrap up our panel with really sort of all of you being very thoughtful about what you wish you knew at the end of 2019 that maybe you now know, And what lessons really should be ingrained in our DNA to make sure that we're better prepared for the next big challenge that may be out there? What we've really learned from the COVID-19 crisis?
In an odd way, every one of the presentations I do to raise money, you have to identify risk. And I would do a presentation for a fund or a company, and I would identify the only thing that can stop this company, the only thing that can stop the march of this kind of growth is global pandemic flu. And each one of my investors said, it's never going to happen. You know, the risk of that is minuscule. Luckily, I'm glad I put that in my disclosure statements because it was less of an argument later on as to whether I'd adequately disclose what could happen. You know, I think I had been through the previous crisis. As some of you know, I was the chief investment officer at JP Morgan Chase during the financial crisis. And so the first move, as I said before, the first move for most companies was to recognize the crisis and establish the amount of liquidity. That gave you the ability to make a lot of decisions. The companies that didn't do that suffered immeasurably during this time frame. So I knew that. I would say the thing I didn't know, and this is maybe more personal, is we've all had to learn to manage our businesses over Zoom, which is a different thing. At least in our business, managing people, allowing people to prosper. Also, what was interesting is our remote employees, for the first time, had an equal say to our employees who weren't remote. And I learned a lot of things about people who were based all over the world that I didn't know before. That was the biggest learning for me, and I'd like to be ready to manage more remotely going forward.
Arnold, what did you learn that you wish you knew before all of this that you would now ingrain in the DNA of how you manage your business?
It's pretty funny how common it is, because I would always say, when people say, what keeps you up at night? I would say, the only thing that keeps me up at night, I would make some flip remark about a TV show or something, and I would say, but anything that makes people afraid to travel keeps people from traveling. And so one thing I've learned is I'm never going to say that again because obviously it happened. So I'm only saying positive things from now on. So the bottom line, though, is a similar thing, is we increased our communications tremendously because we're in a crisis. We raised $23.6 billion, which is a substantial sum for a company our size, over the months with nobody in an office. We weren't in an office, the banks weren't in an office, the investors weren't in an office, the lawyers weren't in an office. So we did it all virtually and kept the company alive with liquidity and whatnot. But the amount of communication, the nature of communication has fundamentally changed permanently going forward. And the other thing, the things that were reinforced. We went into this with a strong balance sheet. Thank goodness we did, okay? And so coming out of this, we will return to a strong balance sheet over time because it'll allow you to weather storms when they happen, and the world is full of surprises.
Yeah, Rita, what did you learn from this year that would help protect what you do from future shocks in terms of stimulating tourism for Portugal?
Several things, but I would like to highlight the communication part, because we are dealing with the industry, so all the economic operators, then we have tourists, and then we do have the residents, and we do have to have a communication strategy to cover all these three players. And this is something that should be easy to implement, but it's really not easy to execute. And so we did have a communication strategy, but I think we undermine a little bit, the need to have a very assertive, clear, timely, needed communication strategy. And so my feeling when I look back to what happened in 2020, I see a lot of noisy reactions, and I think it really jeopardized the industry itself. In the long term, I think we will overcome this, but it creates this perception, it increases the perception of risk. And this is terrible in the industry, so we really need to think about communicating better in a very assertive way, clear way, in order to overcome this situation.
Jose, communication and connectedness, it sounds like your sweet spot.
I think that we also need to make this communication more agile to add up what they were telling, to adopt agile in terms of leadership, this capacity to overcome in a timely manner to what is happening and to adapt fast is something that we just learned from this crisis. And there are going to be more crises to come, and we need to be very well prepared. And definitely we need to be more connected between each other, because from my perspective, we have a great risk in cybersecurity, in cyber threats in the future. So we need also to be prepared as industry on how to be reactive and be ready for those challenges that we are facing in an agile way.
And Matthew, you have the last word here. What you wish you'd known, but what you now know that you would bake into your business's DNA to prevent from future shocks.
I think, one of the things that has really hit me was that major disruptions, and there's never been bigger than one, accelerate trends, either to the upside or the downside. Our network is a co-created network. And so I think, for me, I think the biggest lesson was, how do you take the concept of co-creation? Aggregation theory means that everybody who adds to a network actually adds value to that network. And I think we were headed in that direction because our membership and our partners are so diverse. But how do you actually build an ecosystem that allows that to self-perpetuate in a way that, quite frankly, you can get up in the morning and see things being done that you didn't even know were happening because they basically self-created themselves. So creating ecosystems, and those ecosystems actually become stronger with more connection. We talk about interoperability amongst, health passes. We need to strengthen interoperability amongst all ourselves, government, private sector, individual organizations. And this industry is absolutely right for being the leader of this, because nobody has been affected like this, and no other industry is more an ecosystem that depends on each other like we are. And I think that's my big takeaway.
Thank you to the panel. Thank you for all of you for your great questions. Really a pleasure to be with you. So throughout this summit, we're going to have a number of flash learnings from leaders sharing their experiences, what they've learned that has helped them navigate through the pandemic, and what they're doing right now towards their recovery. And I think these sessions, some of which will be live digitally, some on video, will actually show the humanity of this crisis. So first up, we're going to hear from Intercontinental Hotels Group's Chief Executive Officer, Keith Barr, and then you'll hear from Expedia's President of Business Services, Ariana Gorin. Thank you so much, and I'll walk off the stage with you right now.
Hi everyone, I hope that you are well. I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person today, but it's nice to be able to spend some time with you virtually. And I think a year on of dealing with all the challenges we face, it's an important time for us to look back and reflect upon what we've learned and how do we emerge from this as better leaders, as better companies, as a better industry. And I think probably I took away 3 lessons from the last year. The first one was really the power and the importance of purpose. And at IHG, our purpose is true hospitality for good. And that's never been more important than in the past year. And basically through the lens of what does good look like and how do we do good? How can we address all the challenges that confronted us? And I thought about our stakeholders, customers, owners, colleagues, governments around the world. And first with our customers, it was make sure that they were treated right, make sure that they were treated to a safe stay, and understood everything that we were doing to ensure their safety and security as we were managing through the challenges. Clearly then looking after our colleagues, and that was in multiple ways. First, it was getting new operating procedures in place in the hotels and training and protective equipment and redesigning our properties from buffets to front desks, but really making sure they were set up to be successful, but most importantly, be safe. I think then it was our owners, and recognizing that we work with thousands of small business owners around the world who are facing the toughest challenges that they've ever seen before. How do we help them get through the crisis? How do we ensure that they have the liquidity they need to be able to operate their businesses and keep people employed? And that's where we focused on with my peers on advocacy. talking to governments around the world to get those programs set up to protect colleagues with furloughs, or the PPP scheme in the United States and things in other markets around the world too. So making sure that our owners got through this so that we could have a healthy industry when we exit it. I think the last stakeholders were clearly governments. In engaging with them in a very thoughtful way, talking about the importance of our industry, the importance of how many people we employ, how we impact GDP growth, and continue to engage in them on solutions. And again, that's from housing frontline workers to helping with vaccinations, but how do we reopen this industry too? And so, I think our purpose of True Hospitality for Good, helped guide me and my team about all the decisions we had to make. And I'd say with the lens of time, how do people look back and said, they did good, they did the right thing, they made a difference. I think the next thing was really about leadership. And I think we've all, learned a number of leadership lessons. And I think the most important things I took away really were authenticity and the importance and power of communication. First, it was just being authentic with everyone and talking to them about the challenges we're collectively facing through some of the most uncertain times we've ever faced, but also being human and making sure people recognize that we cared about them as individuals and looking after their health and well-being. And it was the power of communication, I think, that helped us get through this. And again, I've learned to change what I do moving forward. Regular, frequent communication, very personable, very transparent. Doing calls for, video calls for thousands of colleagues around the world and taking questions live, real time, so they could ask what they wanted, what was on their mind, to make sure that everyone understood we were going to get through this. And that's probably the last lesson to me I saw, was just the resilience of this industry. It's an amazing, we've bounced back from the financial crisis, from 9/11, and this industry will come back. We are seeing that hunger and that demand for travel as vaccines begin to be administered and as markets reopen. We know that business travel will come back, and groups, meetings, and events will come back, and leisure travel will be the lead on this. But that's exciting to see. But we have to work together as an industry. And so whether it's hotel company to hotel company, or more broadly airlines or cruise, we have to work together to help this industry get through these challenges. But we are incredibly resilient. The desire for travel is there. It will come back time and time again. So again, sorry that I'm not with you all, and I wish you an amazing event and look forward to seeing you when we begin traveling again. Take care.
Hello to the WTTC Global Summit. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today, and I'm looking forward to being there next year, face to face. Today I wanted to share a few learnings from the COVID crisis, as well as implications for our industry and for the world. I would just start by recognizing that it's clearly been a challenging year for all of us. There have been a lot of lows and a lot of challenges, but also a lot of highs. For me personally, 2020 was the year that after 18 years of engagement, I finally got married. And if you had told me that I would be celebrating from Europe with my family in the US over Zoom the day of my wedding, I don't think I would have believed it. But there was such a joy and perfection in the day. And I think that was one of the lessons of COVID and of this last year, which is enjoying those small moments of joy. But for us professionally, it has been very challenging. All companies around the world have had to figure out, how do we take care of our employees in the midst of this crisis? At Expedia Group, we've always had a global workforce and flexible working policies. But with the COVID crisis and the need for people to be working from home, we did have to rethink the way that we were working. And especially for our customer service teams, who were on the front line answering the phones for our customers and travelers and our partners, especially at the height of COVID. So we put in place flexibility. We allowed people to work reduced working hours if they needed to. We made sure that they had the equipment at home so that people were able to do their jobs from home. But doing work from a screen all the time is clearly tiring, and Zoom fatigue is happening more and more around the world. We see the numbers of depressions going up all over the world. And so one of the things we've focused on at Expedia Group is not only how do we help our employees be able to do their jobs from home, but how do we help them with their mental wellness? We put in place a mental wellness hub. We extended our employee assistance program, which allows employees to get easy access to therapy services. In my division, we put in place meeting-free Fridays so that people would have a day where they could have think time, because so much of the other time was spent in meetings. And we put in place a program called Junior Journeys, which was effectively story time, so that working parents who had children at home could have their children have a story read to them by someone else around the world. So the way that we supported each other and our employees has been very critical to getting through this. But obviously, it's also about supporting our industry and our customers and our partners. And this crisis really has brought our industry together in ways we hadn't seen before. I'd always thought that we punched below our weight in terms of being an industry that accounts for 10% of global GDP. And I think this crisis really rallied us to speak with one voice. And when I look at what WTTC has done, creating safe travels with global standardized protocols and stamps for health and safety measures, it has had an impact. And at Expedia Group, we've tried to contribute to bring demand back to our supply partners who need it with our relief and recovery program, where we've put aside $275 million to help our partners. Across all industries, we've seen digital acceleration. This is true outside of travel, but it's especially true in travel. And the beauty of digitization is that it allows us to reverse or to accelerate super quickly. And what the whole industry found at the start of the pandemic is that anything manual without self-service or digital options were the biggest problems. Many of us faced a tsunami of calls and a deluge of customer support issues. We had to take a machine that was built to go in forward gear and take it into reverse 3 times as fast. And at Expedia Group and across the travel industry, we've used the time since last year to innovate and to add self-service everywhere. I'm often asked what my learnings have been around business travel because I run our corporate travel division. Fundamentally, I believe that people do business with people, and there is a human need for connections, whether that's with colleagues from the same company or building relationships with clients or suppliers outside of your company. And as I've talked to our corporate clients, what I've heard over and over is that they're actually now thinking of travel less as a cost or a line item and more as an investment for growth. And that's really good news for all of us in the travel industry. When I think about what the pandemic has taught me, I would say many of the lessons were things I already knew, but the pandemic has really crystallized my thinking. One is the importance of communicating clearly, simply, and often. That's what our teams need. The second is prioritizing, brutally removing the nice-to-haves and just focusing on the must-haves. Third is the importance of resilience and self-care, both physically and mentally. But I think actually the one that surprised me most was that the clarity of the crisis removed organizational silos or organizational boundaries. Because when we had one focus, suddenly we were operating as one organization. For the world, one of the burning platforms that we do need to address is the uneven impact the pandemic has had on women. Last year, McKinsey calculated that women's jobs were 1.8 times more likely to be vulnerable to the COVID pandemic than men's jobs. Women make up 39% of the global workforce, but they account for 54% of the overall job losses. And it's been estimated that we have lost 40 years of progress with the impact of women on the workforce in COVID. Travel is 10% of the world's GDP, and we account for 1 in 10 jobs. And in the 5 years before COVID, we accounted for 1 in 5 newly created jobs. So we have a real role to play in helping healing the world of the issues that we've seen in the gender divide. So in conclusion, former American President John F. Kennedy once remarked that the word crisis in Mandarin is composed of 2 characters, one meaning danger and the other opportunity. If 2020 was a year of crisis for our industry, I believe that 2021 is the year of opportunity. When we look at the scale and the speed of vaccine rollout, when we look at what public and private partnerships have been able to do to start to get travel on the path to recovery, and of course, the real need, the human need to meet people in person and not just by video, we know that we have a role to play in healing the world. And I can't wait to see what we're going to do in the next year and then to be with all of you next year to celebrate the successes we will have had as an industry in 2021. Thank you.
Two really insightful perspectives from leaders in our industry, and interesting theme of coming out of a shock, the opportunity that's created as we see acceleration of trends that were already in place, such as the digital acceleration that is really going to be so good for our industry. And this conference is going to be a great example of that. The team that produces this conference every year had to be so nimble. They were preparing first for a conference in 2020 in Puerto Rico. Because of a disaster in Puerto Rico, they shifted here to Cancun. They were well on their way to producing this conference in Cancun in 2020 when suddenly everything stopped. And then for a year, they were dormant. But then having to regroup coming out of the pandemic and produce one of the first major conferences that we're seeing in the world, bringing together a live audience, but also a virtual audience, shows how nimble our industry can be. And I'd love all of you to think about this team as you see not only the integration of panels here on stage, those of you in the audience, but how we're going to be bringing in live guests in the coming hours. We're going to be doing that also in our strategic insight sessions. And so we're going to actually have multiple programs going on at once. This will be particularly interesting for those of you that are watching remotely, that are watching this conference digitally. Here on the main stage, we're going to be exploring next the COVID-19 experience from a North American perspective. Now, if you're viewing on the digital platform, you can stay right here with us on the main auditorium page to watch that session live, or you can actually visit the video on demand room now, or you can do it later, and you can view 3 other sessions that are happening simultaneously and will remain on the site, on the platform. Those include regional focuses focusing on Asia Pacific, Europe, and Latin America. And we're very pleased to have a wonderful cast of speakers on all of those panels, including James Lang, Pansy Ho, Bernadette Romulo Puyat, Frederick Jowson, Nigel Huddleston, and Julian Guerrero Orozco. So I recommend those of you here in the room, when you have a chance, when you're back in your room or traveling home, please check in on some of those other regional panels. Those of you at home, you have your choice. And we're really happy to have an old friend come back once again to moderate the panel here in the room. And I want to welcome the editor-in-chief of Travel Weekly, Arnie Weissman, who will bring his panel onto the stage.
Thank you, Kathleen. Am I on? Yes? Okay. Thank you, Kathleen. You know, North America, the region of North America generated $240 billion in visitor spend in 2019. The countries, Canada, Mexico, the US, and the Caribbean as a region are all in the top, I'm going to take this off, in the top 15 of countries where travel and tourism has generated excellent levels of GDP in the top 15%. So what did these countries learn during the pandemic, and how will COVID-19 reshape tourism? Here to help me explore that in conversation I'd like to welcome first Greg Webb, CEO of Travelport, Fred Dixon, CEO of NYC & Company, Robin Tauk, co-owner Tauk, and chairman of Tourism Cares, the industry nonprofit, J.D. O'Hara, CEO of Internova Travel Group, and Alex Zozaya, executive chairman of Apple Leisure Group. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. So when you look at North America, there's really three ways we can look at it. There's domestic travel, there's intra-regional travel, and then there's international outbound travel. And we're going to be talking about each of them as they were all dramatically impacted during the pandemic. So let's look at domestic travel first. And we have panelists representing different markets that had very different outcomes during 2020 and during the pandemic. New York, Fred, NYC & Company, suffered very, very badly during the pandemic. But the national parks, if they suffered at all, suffered from an abundance of success. And Robin, whose company travels to the national parks, I'd like to ask you about that too. But let's start with New York. Fred, you were coming off a record year of visitation in 2019. Where is it now? How was that? Where is it now, and where is it going? How has it been reshaped? Let's start with that.
Thank you very much, Arnie, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredibly challenging year, certainly in the Northeast, and I think for urban destinations in particular, we have our own set of challenges. Certainly, one of our greatest strengths in normal times, the density and that energy and excitement that you get in places like New York, became a real liability. But we've learned to live with that. We've learned to manage it. And I'm really happy to say that New York is reawakening. What we've seen over the past 4 to 5 weeks is that occupancy is beginning to rebuild, certainly on the weekends. It is definitely being led by leisure travel, and we've heard that theme, I think, throughout the morning. But we're above 50% in occupancy the last 4 weeks, adjusted for the new inventory levels that we have, and growing optimism every day. And I'm a firm believer, and we've heard it this morning, that humanity and human nature is going to, I think, take us more back to behaviors that we're used to. I think people are craving those experiences that they've been missing. And in urban destinations like New York, we are preparing for that future. And I think you also asked, how has it changed? I think, for us in New York, one of the things that we've discovered is we have amazing outdoor spaces that we really had underutilized. I think Matthew touched on the idea that trends get accelerated in moments like this. And what we've done is we've taken back many of our streets for pedestrians in New York. And so if you've had a chance to see it on television, or some of you that have been in New York, and you've seen this incredible outdoor cafe culture that's being built, is infusing an energy and an excitement that we haven't seen, I think, in the dining space in New York on this level. And I was just with Danny Meyer, one of our leading restaurateurs last week. We shot a segment in his wonderful restaurant, Gramercy Tavern. And it was just wonderful to be with him, to be on the street, to see the energy of New York alive and thriving in a really exciting way. We're looking forward to Broadway's return in the fall. With the new commitments that the industry is making to diversity and equity inclusion, focusing on our neighborhoods, focusing on our people, making sure that tourism is the most positive factor and impact across all 5 boroughs is one of our leading strategies. We've had that commitment for a long time, but that too has accelerated in this moment. And so what you're seeing is that the people are focused, the product is reinventing itself, and optimism is growing literally every day.
Okay, Fred, I want to stop on one thing that you had mentioned. You said the occupancy based on adjusted inventory. Yes. And we know that many hotels, iconic hotels, have shut their doors during the pandemic. How much of the reduction is due to, you think, permanent closing, and some of it, how much of it will be for temporary until demand rebounds?
Yeah, great question. We'd experienced about 10 years of dynamic hotel growth in New York, and we were 3rd behind Orlando and Las Vegas in terms of total inventory. We went from about 124,000 rooms pre-pandemic to about 88,000 rooms today. So about 200, or a third, of our hotels remain closed in New York. Some of them have mentioned that they're going to be closed permanently, hotels like the Roosevelt. But at the same time, what we're seeing is that so many of them are putting dates on the calendar to reopen. We just saw 2 of our top luxury hotels open at the beginning of April, the Mandarin and the Peninsula. And more hotels are announcing openings literally every day in May and in June and July. And another exciting aspect is that lots of projects were already in the pipeline, construction had already begun, and we're seeing those hotels open. So we're actually adding new inventory at the same moment that we're reopening existing inventory. And we project, based on the pipeline, that we'll be back to about 118,000 rooms by the end of 2021. So we're pretty optimistic, and we, the confidence that the market and investors are showing in New York is a terrific sign of optimism for the future.
That's great. Robin, you, on the other hand, had a pretty good year, didn't you, in 2020 in terms of the national parks and the outdoor spaces. Tell us a little bit how that went and how that might change and reshape the way that Americans tour domestically.
Absolutely. First of all, our TAUC headquarters are 1 hour outside of New York City, so we've seen the change happening in the rebound in New York, and we're with you, Fred. Thank you for having us. Our company, our family, we're one of the oldest tour operators in the United States. My grandfather started tours and got license number 1 in 1925. And in fact, we opened many national parks as early as 1927. So we have a long history. And it's been a tough year, but we are rebounding in a way we've never seen before. So many crises that we have been through. This one is different, and how our guests are responding certainly to want to be safe outdoor areas, and our national parks in the United States are among the most beautiful in the world, and we did start operating. We were 11 months shut down. That was the first time we shut down in 96 years since World War II, and our very first startup was February in, of all places, our #1 national park, Yellowstone and Grand Tetons. We had a soft start. Our family wanted to assure health and safety. We were cautious to rebound. And we had several groups that went, intrepid, brave, supportive travelers who didn't know what to expect of all times in the dead of winter, of the COVID winter, a resounding success. In fact, many of those guests are coming back to go back to Yellowstone in winter next year. It was a real moment of pride for us, for our company. Where are we today in terms of domestically? We've had all of our years, although Europe is our #1 area right now. We are a United States, North American tour operator. And at this time, 95% of our guest base are vaccinated. It's just an incredible statistic. Our CEO, Dan Mahar, has told us that he expects almost 97%. And 90% of those people are holding the same destinations to where many of you are from, holding the same destination in hopes of traveling there very soon, hopefully by this summer. The resurgence, the spring surge we've had across the United States has been phenomenal. It includes so many of our national parks, obviously Yellowstone, Tetons, Grand Canyon, Bryce, Zion, Hawaiian parks, the Northwest, Denali and land programs to Alaska right now, Acadia. These are strong areas, but they're also combined with some of America's greatest cities. And I do believe that of our 423 national parks in the US and the support that we give to national parks around the world, we're going to see combinations of outdoor travel experiences with the great cities. So just recently, we opened Charleston, Savannah with Hilton Head. New Orleans is starting this month with Mississippi River. Our Hawaii programs will be starting up soon. Every United States tour package that TAUC offers will be opening by June, and we're very proud to see that, and the guests are really excited to be there. What's changed? What's different? Small groups. For the first time in our history, some of the national parks are insisting on less than 10 people coming in a group, which is a significant change for us, in particular Grand Canyon. And I also wanted to just quickly mention that the United States Tour Operators Association, of which we're a big part, 56% of those tour operators are actively operating programs at this time. So good news ahead, starting with North America travel.
That's wonderful. So, Alex, let me ask you, intra-regional North American, that's your bread and butter. That's what are you observing? And Mexico has been open this whole time. The Caribbean, kind of island by island, has had different sorts of policies. But how was your past year? How has it been reshaped, and where is it going?
Well, even though our company is a U.S. company, our core business is sending American travelers outside of the United States, as you said, regional, most of them within Mexico and the Caribbean area, but also some long haul as well. And of course, since the pandemic hit, it hit us in different ways in different places. Some islands in the Caribbean are still struggling, depends on what are the policies. And San Martin is one of the latest that we opened, Curacao, all of them that still have the links with the European countries, and they have to follow by different policies. But then we have a lot of business in terms of distribution. We're the #1 customer of Mexico, for example, or Dominican Republic or Jamaica, but we also have a lot of hotels in this area, part of our group within AM Resorts. And I think the recovery has been different in different places. I would say Mexico's been the fastest, the most successful one. I think, because there was no restrictions, still no restrictions. I mean, none of you had to have a test to come here. Many of you need to have tests to go back to your country, but you don't need a test to come back here. So I think that the fact that it was open and the protocols were enforced, and I think the vacationers start experiencing a better and more safe perception once they come here than even the ones they experience at home. I think that helped a lot. I think in Mexico, we started recovering so fast, the hotels reopened faster, but also because Americans did not have so many places to go to. You know, the cruise ships were not on the play. Then a lot of the destinations outside in the Caribbean remained closed. Then Dominican Republic started to pick up. Jamaica is doing very good. Costa Rica is doing good as well. Of course, the connectivity is an issue. Ironically, I was talking yesterday with President Santos from Colombia, and he said, what do you think is one of the factors that Mexico recovered faster than the other destinations, which are doing a great job? Like, Jamaica just announced having vaccine for all the hospitality personnel. Dominican Republic also is about to do that. And in Mexico, they took not on the vaccination side, but on the testing. For example, all of our hotels, including here, we provide free tests on site, so it's not an inconvenience, and it's for free. And if you get tested positive, we offer 14 days quarantine, all inclusive, and actually 2 rooms, one for you and one for your spouse. So if any of you get COVID positive after this meeting, don't worry, because this is a courtesy of the Chapur family. You'll stay here 2 weeks for free, all inclusive. But we've been doing that also in our hotels in AM Resorts, and a lot of hotels are doing that, and that's very positive and it's working. But ironically, one of the reasons why in Mexico recovered faster is because we had zero help from the federal government, unlike in other countries. In other countries where we had federal help from the federal governments, we were in not such a rush to reopen because the government helped us to pay part of the payroll, and they gave us a tax break, and they gave us some additional incentives to help us, the private sector, to cope with the crisis. In Mexico, was zero help, and as a result of having zero help, we have to reopen quickly. It was not a matter of how can we stop losing money. We will continue to lose money. We're losing money in some hotels as well still, but it was, what is the point where we lose less money by having the hotel open than having the hotel closed, and at the same time generate the employment. So in Mexico, we were kind of forced to put our act together, get the private sector got together, move immediately. Big help from the state governments. Quintana Roo is a great example of how they did great things, but also, in Los Cabos, Baja California, in Jalisco, in Puerto Vallarta, etc., other places. But it was an alliance in between the private sector and the state governments because we had no recourse to immediately put ourselves back to work. And ironically, the strategy worked. Pretty much it worked better than other places by doing nothing instead of receiving a subsidy. So, but anyway, we're back in business, and just want to say that the numbers we've been having in the last month for future bookings from the United States to Mexico and the Caribbean for the remaining of this year and winter of next year are better than this time in 2019. The market is a little bit different, no incentive groups that we lost. Weddings are smaller and less weddings, and so some of the high-end business is still behind. But in general terms of bookings, even though the rates are lower, We still have to fight for those rates to recover the rates. But the volume, the traffic, for particular core destinations, Mexico, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Costa Rica, are even better than they were this time in 2019. So pretty much optimistic about what's going to happen.
I'm curious this aspect of not having government help. I know that one of the problems that is faced in the U.S. is that there's a shortage of workers, in part because there is generous help to people, that there's less incentive maybe to come back, and so there's turning out to be shortages of service workers. Outside of Mexico, are you seeing that in the other properties?
Yeah, no, I think that's, you know, you'd say, of course, we desperately need help. I mean, if I have to choose where the federal government should help us right now, or the airlines, even though we're not in the airline business, I think we really depend so much on connectivity and the airlines, and they really need help right now. So with the whole sector recovers, reactivate. But it's ironic how, because we had no help, we had no choice but to put our act together, move quickly. We pay for the protocols, we pay for the testing, we do the whole thing. So in the point that on those places where they have strong subsidies, particularly some islands, for example, that is still depends on the Commonwealth, they still receiving some incentives. So you're in less rush. You can wait because you're still getting some subsidies, which is good. I'm glad they're helping the families. But on the other hand, the sense of urgency and put your act together immediately, you don't have it. Here, we had to do it, otherwise we would die. And it worked so far.
That's really interesting. I want to remind the audience also, by the way, that you can use your app to ask questions as well, so we'll be getting to your questions too. JD, talking about the different destinations and how they prepare and sort of destination readiness, I know is kind of a question that's related to this. Hawaii is kind of an interesting case at this point. It is doing a lot of community input, in part because the residents discovered that actually they kind of like not having as many tourists around. And they're willing to, even though 40% of the economy is tourism-based, there's a lot going on there in terms of how the destinations are preparing for arrival visitors. What are you seeing? Because you've got about approximately a third of all travel agencies belong to one of the Internova brands. So you've got a pretty good visibility on the leisure sector. Is this impacting the Hawaii sales? What are you hearing from your members of the various groups?
So I think, first of all, Hawaii is and will always be a massive destination for U.S. travelers and Asia-Pac travelers as well. I went with my family, and so 6 of us were 6 of 3 million that went a month ago, but they've had 3 million people since they put in the Safe Travelers program back in the fall. I think what you're referring to is the DMAP plan, which is the Destination Management Action Plan, I think it stands for, which I think the theme is healthy land, healthy people. And so it focuses on natural resources, community culture, and the Hawaiian residents want to take part in what their experience will be like for the visitors, and the visitors can take part for what their experience will be like when they arrive. So to put it in perspective, though, if we look at occupancy rates this year using hotels, January would have been around 23% occupancy. That jumped to 31% in February and then to 43% in March. Now, some of that may have to do with spring break travel, but there's no shortage of demand, certainly. But yes, I think there will be I think 10 million people visited Hawaii in 2019. I think it'll be less than that going forward, largely in part to this DMAP plan.
Yeah, so this is an example. I don't know if you're seeing or if any of you are seeing other examples where destinations have used the pause to rethink travel management. Most people, of course, want more, and they've always bought into the WTTC argument that the economics of tourism are fantastic. It's jobs that can't be offshored. It's a clean industry, relatively speaking. But following the over-tourism that we saw leading into the pandemic, do any of you have thoughts about or specific examples of destinations that have restructured and used this time to rethink tourism?
I mean, I can speak for New York. I mean, for us, one of the things that became very clear early on was the protection of small businesses, and certainly minority and women-owned businesses as well. I mean, we had made so many advances in New York. The experience is made up of small businesses by and large, and we knew coming out of this pandemic, we could not have a destination that lacked the flavor and diversity that we had before, in large part because of the small business community. So we actually used this opportunity to double down on our efforts in the small business space, certainly working to bring equity, of course, to our marketing in ways that we had not previously done before. We thought we had made strong commitments, but we realized there was so much more opportunity there. And so for us, coming out of this moment, really focusing on those experiences that make New York unique in the world, and support the business community, which also supports families, households, and neighborhoods, is our newest commitment. And I think that's actually going to make us stronger in the long run. And I think a lot of destinations are coming to those same conclusions.
So Greg, I'm not ignoring you because you're the furthest away from me. I can see you. So, and everyone has been talking about that business and corporate travel is likely going to be the last segment to return. Leisure, the demand is so obvious in leisure. You probably have the best visibility in terms of booking patterns in the corporate space. What are you seeing, and what are your predictions when you look forward about business and corporate travel in North America in particular?
Yeah, during this pandemic, I've given up predicting because so far, most of my predictions have been incorrect. But the reality is, what we're seeing in the business side of things is that it's only recently started coming back. But in a lot of the discussions we're having with corporations, and I'm sure other people on this panel have had those same conversations, there's a belief that we will go to a hybrid model of work for some period of time. There's also, though, I just talked to a CEO of a very large multi-company conglomerate, and he was talking about the fact that as soon as somebody loses a deal, they'll be back on the road again. So the reality is people are gonna get back to travel. I think it goes a little bit to actually what Greg O'Hara said earlier. I guess this is officially the Greg chair, that the certainty around policy, certainty around the safety protocols and things will generate the impetus for people to get back on the road for business travel. And I think it's going to lag. We're no question, when we look at the shopping data, almost 2/3 of the shopping data today is to leisure destinations. So we're seeing that that's recovering significantly faster. But we're beginning to see the growth of traditional kind of LA, New York, Dallas, Chicago. In the US, we're starting to see those business hubs begin to generate more and more traffic.
Yeah, I mean, given to your point about, I think you're right, as soon as the first deal is lost, people will be back on planes. But one thing that Zoom has certainly been used a lot in my company, I'm sure a lot of yours, is for intra-company meetings. That do you hear and do you foresee that perhaps that aspect of business travel will be permanently reduced?
I think there will be a permanent change. I don't know what that change exactly is. We've talked a lot about the fact that you may have more remote workers than you had before. That may actually generate more travel because you may have more remote workers that have to go back to headquarters on a more regular basis. So they're working at home for most of the quarter, but where they wouldn't have traveled at all during the quarter, they may have to go on a monthly basis to HDQ for some good reason. So I do think there'll be a permanent shift. It's hard to figure out what that shift's going to be, because one of the things that I find really interesting in having discussions with others is when you move to that hybrid environment, it's been fine. We're all on Zoom. We've all been doing fine in terms of productivity, in terms of the way that we've been interacting with our employees, but that's because we're all home. Nobody's in the office. The problem is when you get back to a hybrid model and you got half of the group that's in the office and half that are at home, all of a sudden, all that social dynamic, all the social environment, somebody mentioned it earlier, I've learned things about employees I never would have learned in the office because it all happens on Zoom. So everybody, you know, the first 2 minutes of the call is, oh, my kid just graduated high school. My baby threw up in the, it's all that kind of stuff. That's going to go back to the office, and that hybrid environment, I do think is going to be a drag on productivity, and it's going to cause people to relook at exactly what scenario they're willing to look at.
Yeah, I would imagine also that business travel, once that gets going, people are going to be less available for Zooms. They're going to be on airplanes. They're going to be moving along. JD, you've got a lot of corporate travel in yours. Are you observing anything different?
One of our divisions does a regular, or we all do regular surveys, but one of them on the corporate side did a survey recently, and the results were that 83% of our corporate clients would be back on the road come October 1st. I don't think that's 100%, but I completely agree with Greg. I think that I don't know what it's going to be, but something will make up for the lack of. It reminds me of the advent of the internet and email, when that was the paperless society, and all we did was print more emails. And I think there's going to be some version of that comes out of this, and I'm not sure what it is. We're also seeing our MICE business is doing extremely well, so some sort of hybrid meetings and events businesses as well. But you can foster existing relationships on a box on a screen for so long, but it's very, very difficult to forge new ones. And I think this is a good example of why people will get back on the road. As soon as they have their first meeting, I think they're going to say, oh, now I remember why we were on the road so much. Yeah.
So JD, well, we've got you. Cruises are certainly a huge, huge part of the North American travel scene. It's both intra-regional, it can be domestic, it could even be outbound to another region. So your leisure brands, which I think is the majority of your brands, that is so central to their businesses. So one thing someone asked me yesterday was, how are travel agencies doing? Did you lose a lot of membership? Was there a lot of churn among the different brands, among your brands and other brands? I'm just kind of curious, because so many of the suppliers really depend on the agencies.
Yep.
And that's just a question about how that's going to impact and reshape travel in North America.
Yeah, we've grown from a membership perspective, so I think we're probably fortunate in that regard, but I think some of my colleagues in the room here have experienced the same. So cruise is massive from a global perspective. I think there's 30 million passengers roughly that traveled in 2019. In North America, mostly the US, accounts for more than half of that. So this has been a huge impact on our business. I think I'll take this opportunity to thank all of the cruise lines who did what they did to protect commissions, because I think that really kept a lot of our agencies afloat. It's a mystery what's going to happen here. There's discussions going on with the CDC and the major cruise lines. I think right now, Robin, we talked about November 1st, right, was the official date, but there seems to be hope and there seems to be progress being made with the CDC and the cruise lines that hopefully in July sometime they'll start cruising, but right now it's ex-US ports. So it's going to be a rough summer if we can't get back to sea.
Okay.
For small ship cruising, I think small ship cruising is going to bounce back first. We've been doing really experiential land and small ship cruising and European riverboating now for almost 25, 30 years. And small is big was a motto that TAO coined about long before the pandemic, maybe 10 years ago or so. And it is so coming to fruition now, both in group size and in the experience out at sea. Iceland, as many of you know, is accepting vaccinated travelers. We have beautiful small ships that do circumnavigation exclusive for TAO. Greece will be opening, we heard yesterday, and we do have our first group in Greece on June 4th with another small ship there. So Americans are feeling comfortable going in an environment where they trust the operators, they know the protocols up front. Cruising is going to come back big, as we know, when it is ready. And for European riverboating, it seems to feel one of the safest way for the American travelers to experience their first European vacation after the pandemic. We had the largest increase in riverboating bookings, in luxury riverboating bookings in the last 2 weeks than we've ever had in the history of our riverboating. Wow. So they are really ready to go. And to another point, JD, and to Matthew, who was speaking earlier, I foresee an amazing resurgence of the value proposition of the travel advisor and the tour operator and cruise industry. Our traveling American public need these advisors. They are changing and changing their plans. They're confused by the cancellation policies, by where their money is going, by the security of where their deposits are kept. And when you have the trust of the companies that many are represented here and the advisors, they are calming and encouraging the American public to get out there. And I think it's going to be a stronger partnership and relationship than it's ever been, and the consumer is going to benefit in the end.
Okay. I should take this moment to ask the moderators back of house, are there any questions that have come through from the audience? Okay. I'm going to go back to you, Robin, for just a second. Earth Day was last week. You are chair of Tourism Cares. I'm on the board of Tourism Cares. Fred's on the board of Tourism Cares. The pandemic seems to, as Matthew had said, accelerate certain things, and particularly it accelerated sustainability. The shift go back to it'll still progress, but maybe a little slower?
I personally don't think we're ever going to see the issue of sustainability to slow. Tourism Cares is an 18-year organization. Thank you, Arnie, for being on the board for 10 years, Fred, as well. We have about 165 member companies. We're open globally, and I have never, in my 40-year experience in the industry, I've never seen so many in that time and through the crisis that we've had, put sustainability and all that it stands for the planet and our people and our resources that this industry depends on right at the forefront. And I enjoyed the session yesterday, Gloria, with the sustainability task forces that you put together. I was on the original one from Copenhagen as well. The Tourism Cares is looking to help unite the industry and just be a catalyst for this positive impact of social and community care. And it's not about putting it aside. It's not an appendix, as somebody said later, or a project, in my view. Sustainability is really the pandemic has brought a focus on the fact of the ecosystem of our industry and how combining it is with social, community, and culture. And it's the most important issue that we have moving forward. You had asked me what topics might come right to the forefront. For me and for our organization, obviously climate action is no longer about advocacy, it's about action. We have the tools, we have great opportunities to measure and to work together. And secondly, destination stewardship, and we've talked about that already. We have, during the pandemic, in June of 2020, Tourism Cares brought together a coalition, the first of its kind, called the Future of Tourism Coalition. It is 6 and 7 nonprofits, some of the best in America: Green Destinations, Sustainability Travel Index, Travel Foundation, Tourism Cares, obviously, the GSTC. Never before had these 6 entities worked together. We are all working together now with guiding principles, and fundamentally, we have the tools for every company to embrace sustainability and to get on their journey wherever they are and have this positive impact. Very important.
Thank you. Thank you you've now identified your key takeaway from the panel. I'd like the other panelists to just close with, from what we've discussed, is a key takeaway you would like the audience to be focused on. And Greg, let's start with you.
Yeah, I will go back to, I think that based on everything we see today, all the shopping data and the booking data, people are looking for certainty. They're looking to feel safe and looking for certainty. I think as governments get consistent with policy as we go through this summer season, we've seen what the EU just did. The UK has come out with a pretty definitive policy. The US is getting closer to being more definitive around its policy. As that happens, I think you will begin to see kind of an uptick in just overall travel, just based on everything we see today in shopping data. All of the travel right now is being driven by policy, not by people, because there's so much pent-up demand in the system that as soon as people have a realization of what they can count on, I think you're going to see a significant uptick.
Okay, Fred?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say, a conversation with Danny Meyer last week in New York, he said, you know, we've been in a crouching position for quite some time in the hospitality industry. And when you have to move from a crouching position to a standing position, you have to lurch forward. And I think he's right. You know, travel is going to be a coiled spring. It's going to rebound quickly. And, you know, you've heard it mentioned here already this morning, but the need to communicate clearly, to Greg's point, and to emit positivity. I think people are looking for permission to travel. And I think we have a great story to tell, and we're bullish on the future.
Thank you, Fred. And Robin, you mentioned sustainability. JD?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think we could argue that the U.S. has done a poor job in a lot of things, but I think they've done a pretty good job in the vaccination process and rollout. I think if the rest of the world can follow suit, that would be helpful. Everyone I talk to, you know, they're going from the vaccine clinic to the airport, and they're getting out of here, and they're going to spend twice as much money, go for twice as long. People want to travel, need to travel, really. So I think, you know, takeaways, buckle up. I think everybody in this room is going to be busier than ever for the next couple of years.
Okay, and Alex?
No, I'm very optimistic about the people wanting to travel and valuing more now experiences and willing to spend more time and money in experiences rather than goods. So that's great for the sector. I think people now has a different perspective of really live the moment, you know, put more life into our lives, and travel certainly is one of the things that can really enrich your life. I think that's a different perspective, and that's good for the industry. But I do think that in the short term, even though in the United States has been a phenomenal job about vaccination, the whole world is interconnected. So I really hope we can interact in a better way, that we adopt similar policies, protocols, acceptance of vaccination, and that we help the other countries. It's not just that the United States could be 100% vaccinated, and probably Israel, probably the United Kingdom, but until a large percentage of the world, entire world, is vaccinated and ready to receive and have customers, we won't really reactivate international travel. So I really hope that the level of interaction and cooperation among the different nations, particularly those who value tourism as part of their economies and for their communities, as the more they interact and the better they communicate and adopt same type of protocols and policies, the faster we're going to reactivate. So yes, the United States, it's doing a great job, I think, right now. But I think part of the leadership from the United States to the world will be to really enforce the reconnecting, the cooperation among the nations, and really put this back together. If we can do something within the G20 itself, that represents 80% of the international travel in the world, if we can have at least the countries of the G20 put example, that I think the rest of the world will follow, and the whole world will reactivate in international travel.
Thank you. Thank you all. Ladies and gentlemen, the panel.
Thank you, Arnie. Thanks, panelists. That was really terrific. So it is now time for lunch. It will be served in the Universal Ballroom. That is upstairs. On the way, do not forget your health and safety protocols. That means wearing your masks until you're actually eating and drinking. Also, hand washing. There'll be plenty of people on standby to, with a hand sanitizer, and maintaining social distancing. We also have a short lunch. We have to have you back in the room by 1:10. We have a virtual audience, and so in deference to them, we would like you in your seats at 1:10. The program begins at 1:15 sharp, and we will go whether people are still coming in and out of the room, but we'd love to have you in your seats. Also, feel free, while you have a chance, to explore the WTTC virtual platform. I've taken a look at it, and you'll notice this is a very paperless conference. Everything is on the technology, including exhibitors this year. So you can look at exhibitors, you can also look at some of our sponsor videos, and we're gonna run some of those sponsor videos, which are very inspiring as you leave the room. We'll see you back here at 1:10.
Thanks. Enjoy that. That's going to be with.
Distinguished guests, please welcome back the summit anchor, Kathleen Matthews.
Good afternoon, buenos tardes. I hope you had a wonderful lunch. And for those of us who are joining virtually from around the world, welcome back. We are getting started on time so that you are getting the benefit of wonderful, wonderful insights and programming. Our guests are just getting seated in the room here, but we're excited to kick off session 2, which is going to focus on how we accelerate the recovery of the travel and tourism sector. This morning we heard war stories from the past year, but also a lot of optimism about the resilience of our industry. And now we're going to hear nuts and bolts on what that recovery looks like and how we can move it faster. This, of course, will require, first and foremost, easing some of the mobility restrictions that are still in place, but also, very importantly, rebuilding the trust and the confidence of the traveler. So first up, we're going to have a flash learning. These allow us to explore from a human-centric perspective the experience of leaders in our sector with COVID-19 and how they're able to accelerate their own recovery in their countries and in their businesses. And we're going to hear right now from Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Royal Caribbean Cruises, Richard Fain.
Hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be joining you at WTTC's 2021 Global Summit, even if it is only virtual. It's been one hell of a year, with hotels and borders closed, airplanes grounded, and of course, cruise ships docked around the world. Travel and tourism was clearly one of the sectors most impacted by COVID-19. I've been asked to make some comments about how it's affected the Royal Caribbean Group and what lessons we've learned during this awful time. I would point out 3 particular things that stood out to me. Number 1 was the importance of our people. Number 2, the importance of setting priorities. And number 3, the importance of agility. Let me take each of these in order. First is people. At the Royal Caribbean Group, it has always been the people who have made us successful. Always. The men and the women who work so hard to organize and deliver amazing vacations to our guests. They've been our mainstay during the good times, but they've also been key to our success as we navigate this crisis. They protected the health and the safety of our guests and their fellow employees. They helped figure out how to maintain the liquidity and arrange the financing. And they have helped prepare us for coming back into service. Everybody has suffered during this pandemic, but working for a cruise line has to be one of the most demanding jobs, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate all of their support. One of the key learnings in this regard has been the importance of communication with all the members of our team. More than psychological counseling, more than emergency financial aid, we have found that open and honest communication has been a key ingredient of our success in this area. Now, the second thing I would mention is the importance of establishing clear and unambiguous priorities. That allows everyone to focus on the same goals, and it speeds up our ability to achieve those goals. We've gone through 3 phases, 3 sets of priorities during this pandemic. At the beginning, the priority was liquidity, just making sure that we had enough cash to pay our bills even if the pandemic lasted a long time. That was our initial focus, and it helped us during all the uncertainties. At the same time, we had to deal with the human side of the crisis, getting our guests and our crew home safely, sometimes to home countries that refused to accept even their own citizens. In all, we repatriated about 70,000 people, despite a labyrinth of conflicting rules and requirements. After we got through that initial liquidity hurdle, our priorities shifted to operating during the pandemic in a responsible way and preparing ourselves for the return to service at the end. We took steps to enhance our public health standards and to ensure that our travel partners, public health officials, and others all knew about the strong steps we were taking. Even if we weren't sailing, we needed to protect our brand reputation for when we returned. For example, we formed a Healthy Sail panel in cooperation with Norwegian Cruises, comprised of the world's leading experts. That Healthy Sail panel not only helped us adopt very effective protocols, but also gave the public and health authorities confidence about the future. And now, our priority has shifted to the final act, the healthy return to service in a healthy and prudent manner. We already have 4 ships operating in Asia and in Europe, and will shortly be expanding that to 15 of our 60-ship fleet. We're also preparing for a broader startup of the rest of the fleet, which we hope to begin in July. Our objective is to reduce the likelihood of a person on board becoming sick from this virus to lower than the risk of infection in the surrounding community. Now, during each of these 3 phases of priorities, our people understood those priorities so that everyone was working to a common goal. Having such clear priorities and order made decision-making easier for everyone and more consistent. I can't emphasize enough how important that's been to our recovery. The last of these learnings during this pandemic is the importance of agility. That's not inconsistent with the idea of priorities. It means that within those priorities, you have to be agile. Working from home during a pandemic is no fun, and it's always been hard to deal with change. But today, the cacophony of new and often contradictory information has been a real challenge. In this ever-changing environment, I am proud of the many heroes who emerged within our company as everybody moved way outside of their job descriptions and their comfort zones. Everybody wanted to pitch in. People who had never done government relations work had suddenly found themselves talking to cabinet officers in multiple countries around the world about how to repatriate their citizens. Employees who had been working to open exciting new destinations suddenly found themselves instead turning off the lights in ones that had been operating. Against the background of those learnings, we see one shining truth. The world needs travel and tourism. Travel and tourism can unite the world as we recover from COVID and move forward towards a bright and exciting future. People are frustrated at being stuck at home, and they long to soar. It is said that one often doesn't realize how important something is until it's taken away. I think that adage applies here. This pandemic has not only taught us a lot of new medical terms, but I think it has made people realize how important travel and tourism is to the physical, financial, and mental health of people around the world. As we emerge from the truly horrific events of the past year, people, companies, industries, and communities are understandably eager to put all of those experiences behind us and move on. Trust me, I feel the same way. I don't want to sound repetitive and to continue to say how much this pandemic has hurt the entire world, but we've all felt the impact of this terrible virus. It pains me to think of our crew who so eagerly want to return to work, the destinations and the suppliers who rely on our industry to feed their families, and of course, all of you who have been so innovative and patient during the past 13 months. We've made it this far together, and I know we will eventually be back and better than ever. I can't wait to see you all soon on board one of our ships, very soon, so get ready. Thank you all very much.
And thank you for that insight, Richard. You know, we know the recovery will be accelerated based on the widespread availability of testing until we have full implementation across the globe of a vaccine. In this room, for example, how many of you have had both your vaccines? If we can bring the lights up, raise your hand with the 2 vaccines. I know as we interact with each other and we want to approach each other and give each other a hug or handshake, you know, you impulsively say, I've had both vaccines. In other words, I'm safe to be with. Well, that's where we want to get. But until then, we have to have robust testing, which is why it was very important for them to have testing on site here at this event when you arrived, unless you'd been able to get testing before you left your own home countries. Well, we have a one-on-one hot seat to talk about that right now. It's going to focus on testing and specifically the importance of testing on a global scale to minimize the spread of the virus and to make travelers feel much safer and more comfortable getting on airplanes, getting on cruise ships, getting on trains until they are widely vaccinated around the world. So to moderate this panel, I want to welcome another old friend of WTTC. It's great to see my friend Peter Greenberg from CBS News, and he's going to be talking to the Minister of Tourism for Greece, Harry Theocharis.
Mr. Minister, welcome again.
Thank you.
We had a nice chat yesterday as well, for those of you who were able to watch the Global Leaders Dialogue. And I guess let's start with a little bit of history and some irony. If we were going to talk about Greece in January of 2020, we would have talked about over-tourism. And other countries as well, or other cities as well, saying Venice didn't want to become another Barcelona, Barcelona didn't want to become another Venice, and with all due respect, Greece didn't want to become another Greece. We're not talking about how do you manage the numbers, we're really talking about how you revive those numbers now. And interestingly enough, in Kathleen's introduction, we talked about testing, but in a holistic approach, you actually were out of the gate first. Greece basically reopened and made an announcement that as of May 14th, anybody who's proved that they've had full vaccination can come to the country.
Yep.
But you had to get to there first. We talked about testing, we talked about protocols, and we're not just talking about people arriving at your airports. You're a major cruise destination. You're a major cruise turnaround location. So give us an idea of the plan that you had going for, by the way, not just the plan, I should say the plans that you had that got you to this point.
You're very right. First of all, in the premise of your question, which is talking about sustainability and over-tourism. I remember in September 2019, I was in London in WTM. I had a press conference, less than 15 questions from the journalists, 11 about the environment, 7 mentioned Santorini, which is understandable, I guess, because the numbers there are big. But we do forget that sustainability is not about the environment, just about the environment. It's also about the economic sustainability, and it's also about the social sustainability. And those 2 dimensions is really what is at stress now. So in effect, we're really talking about the same issues, because we need to see the problems in its full entirety if we are to make the right decisions. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that we need now to take, as I said yesterday, leadership and show the ways, and others will gather around us. I'm certain about that. We saw this last year. The experience of last year is important. Greece opened as well. We were saying within Europe that tourism needs to open, and the initial discussion was about forget about traveling in the summer, etc. And then everybody gathered around, and in the end, we had some form of tourism. Of course, very small numbers compared to a normal year. Now, this year as well, we believe that we cannot, as a politician, I cannot explain it to my constituency, to the people working in the tourism industry, that given the fact that we now have more knowledge, I'm talking to our doctors last year, I was talking to them, and I'm talking to them now, and I see the difference in their eyes and in how they speak. They have much more confidence, a lot more research, and a lot more knowledge to actually guide us in terms of those decisions. We have rapid tests. which is a huge game changer because they're cheap, they're fast. Last year,
and less expensive.
Yes. Last year, we had to wait 24 hours to get the result and then get people out of their hotel and isolate them. And this was a very, very bad experience. This year, it's going to be right at the airport. If you're positive, you're isolated immediately. And finally, we have the vaccination programs. And we've seen what it does to the countries and the outlook of the people that are vaccinated and when the country has reached high levels of vaccination. So we believe that we cannot explain it to our people that last year, with fewer tool sets, we were open, and we cannot be open this year. So we took a step. We said we have five levels of defense: vaccination or negative testing before you travel, targeted testing, random testing, if you will, when you arrive, isolation in case you're positive with your family at no cost, and of course, no cost as far as the health system is concerned if you need hospitalization, ICU, or anything else, God forbid. And protocols, like last year, the private sector implemented those protocols in an exemplary fashion, and I'm grateful to that because that safeguarded our brand name. The Athens International Airport was voted the 5th most safe airport in the world. Aegean Airlines was voted the 4th most safe airline in the world. So those things are accolades which are important for the brand. And finally, some kind of priority in the vaccination of the tourism employees.
But of course, before you ever did any of that, you had to come up with a definition of terms of what constituted your definition of a quarantine, what constituted your definition of testing, what constituted your definition of a lockdown, et cetera, et cetera. So for example, you made the announcement that you're going to be opening up on May 14th, but when did you make that announcement?
ITB Berlin, so that's about a month ago.
Okay, and yet as we're speaking today, you're still on lockdown.
Yes, but we have also, and this is a good thing about tourism, we had a discussion with the Prime Minister, and we agreed that even if the internal landscape is gray, we need to give clarity to the market. All you cannot operate unless you know what to expect, both in terms of rules and in terms of dates. And I was actually saying back then, I don't want to give dates yet. I want to give the rule set. I want them to be ready to understand how it's going to work, and then to give the dates. In the end, I gave both, and everybody focused on the date for some reason, and I think it's understandable. So when we put a stake on the ground and we said we're opening on the middle of May, now this forced the internal decisions to actually come together. And now we have a specific plan for the internal restrictions, which coincides with our opening of tourism. So the experience is going to be the same. And the guarantee that we make to the rest of the world is whatever a Greek citizen has to face, you have to face as well. There's no discrimination, there's no difference, no two set of rules. You have the same experience just like a local.
I'll give you an example. Turkey is in a lockdown situation between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning, much like you are. And yet, if you are carrying a foreign passport, you're not subject to the lockdown.
Well, every country makes its own sovereign decisions. We do not have two countries, one for locals and one for tourists. We believe that long term, this is what actually the tourists want as well, because we're talking a lot about the change from product to experience, and the experience means nothing unless it's the experience, authentic experience that the locals feel as well. So I think even in the bad times, as well as the good times, I'm adamant that we need to keep one country and not two sets of rules.
And what you did was you set the date and then made everybody work towards the date.
Yes, well, they had to. I can tell you, there's the swan effect, calmness, and then the feet below the water level are walking like that. Yeah, we just say a specific date, but you have to imagine what it means to coordinate with our testing facilities of the CDC and the testing teams, with the police and the fire department that's manning all those border crossings, etc., in order to ensure that people are tested, with the Ministry of Health that wants peace and quiet and nobody in hospitals. They want empty hospitals, understandably, with everybody else involved. And the only silent, if you like, supporter is a Minister of Finance. He doesn't have much say in that, but all he says is, I don't have a lot of money to continue supporting the industry, so please do something so that the industry starts on its own.
But what's interesting, of course, is that forgetting the actual lockdown, you had to come up with a procedure to deal with this sort of a contradictory situation of getting numbers and then managing the public health issue.
Yes.
You had to be able to come up with that, just like your finance minister is dreaming of every night, to generate revenue.
Yes. Of course, it's, I mean, this is all about balance. Life is about balance. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying, and the pivot that we're trying to make is to move away from last year's risk management, which was very horizontal, very geographical. Every country was some kind of traffic light system. Even that was very difficult to push for and implement in practice because it meant data sharing, it meant harmonization of that data, it meant a lot of things in the background to move to an individual risk-based approach. So what we're saying is now we need to take, assess the risk of every individual traveler. We need to ask for negative tests or ask for vaccination and take that risk into account. When we do targeted testing, we have an innovative artificial intelligence system that targets and moves away our testing capacity away from constituencies of people coming from specific countries or being vaccinated or having one dosage of vaccination or having a specific age towards constituencies of travelers which are more risky for us. So this is the kind of approach that we advocate, and actually this is the approach that the WHO is advocating as well. They're saying you need to move to a risk-based approach.
Now, you can't just do this one-dimensionally. When you talk about ports of entry, it's not just the Athens airport, it's the ports, because cruising is such a big aspect of your tourism industry. So you actually moved forward even earlier with that, didn't you?
Yes. Cruising for us is an essential. There was a lot of discussion before about whether cruising is doing more harm than actual good in the local community. I think we've done away with this discussion. We're taking a firm stance and showing specific signs. We're a nautical nation. We felt that we had to help the cruise lines deal with this crisis last year, where they wouldn't be allowed to dock even, to refuel and to replenish their supplies. So we allowed that. We built those bridges, those trust relationships that allows us to have a lot of, or if you like, for them to make the decisions this year to restart earlier with Greece, and we're very grateful for that.
And you had to reach common ground, obviously, with the definition of terms so that they could meet those deadlines.
Yes. Ports are even more difficult to implement those protocols because the protocols, of course, have to be implemented by the ships, but they also have to be implemented by the ports. And the correct cooperation, the different typology of the ports and what port can accept a case and hospitalize it or do whatever, or which port cannot do that, and all that, the capabilities of the ports are much more complex. And there's a lot of coordination happening in the Ministry of Maritime Affairs, which is the ministry responsible for the running of the ports. So this is a particularly complex endeavor. And if you like, the message that we need to take is that in order to restart, we have to walk the walk. We have to actually do the work. You cannot restart just by closing your eyes and wishing the problem away. The problem is still here. We cannot deny it. We cannot just say open tourism and it's going to work anyway. We have to work in order to make tourism work.
So May 14th is a date that if you're a fully vaccinated American passenger, and other countries as well, you are welcome to enter Greece.
Already, if you're a vaccinated American passenger, you can come to Greece today.
Does that apply to cruise ships as well?
Yes, it applies to cruise ships. Actually, cruise ships start on May 3rd, but effectively